Hello and welcome to this guide to a tutorial on Microsoft Word. This video is aimed to be a beginner's guide to understanding Microsoft Word, what you can do with it, why it's important, and some of the features involved in that to help you get started with any project that you're going to be doing for Microsoft Word. So, what is it? Well, it's a document editor / creator tool which allows you to then make documents. So things like essays, dissertations, other Word-based documents like that. You can add images onto it, although it's a little bit more limited to things like PowerPoint. It's great for designing different types of media. So as you can see on my screen at the minute, there's some templates above where we can make brochures, leaflets, calendars, invoices. So a great application to use for CVs because it's all text-based media. So hopefully by the end of this video, we'll just cover those, how to get started and some of the basic things that you need to know. I've got a long list to the right of me, so I will go through. This video will be probably quite long, I can imagine. So as you can see down on the YouTube play bar, there are chapters for this video, so you can skip through if you just want to look at a certain thing, or you can watch the video in its entirety. There will be a little bit of a tutorial that I will do, so please feel free to follow along. But stop, pause, come back to this whenever you like. Just like everything else on our YouTube channel, there are lots of different videos and tutorials that you can access. If you are a Staffordshire University student or a staff member, you can access either our digital learning page or the Tile Hub SharePoint, which contains even more tutorials as well as community areas for you to gather and discuss ideas in as well. With that said, let's actually get to creating a Microsoft Word document. So, when you launch Microsoft Word, you'll be greeted with the page you're seeing now. So I'm going to call this the splash screen. Other people might call it something different, but essentially this is what you'll see when you're opening Microsoft Word. This is an area that will allow you to create a document. So at the top, you can see my mouse moving. This is where you can choose a template. You can see underneath, you can search for a document. So in areas like Microsoft OneDrive, if you've saved something there, you can open this up. And underneath, while I've slightly moved mine to pin, just because I know there's nothing there, I can see all of the recent documents I've opened, as well as any documents that have been shared with me, so I can pull those back up very quickly as well. Generally, at the top, what you'll want to do is select a blank document, because you can do a lot of things with it. It's a lot more moldable. And even if you are going to change this to a template later on, it's just a good place to put all of that information in, so you've got all the information there before you make it look pretty. However, what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to set the language for my Microsoft Office and by extension Word to use first. Because by what I've noticed by default, especially on the computer I'm using, is Microsoft has a tendency whenever I launch an application to launch it in the American English. Hopefully you can tell by my accent, I am British, so we have different spellings of words. So if I spell a word incorrectly or write it correctly, I don't want that then to display as incorrect when it is the correct spelling. For example, apologise, we spell it with an S, where America will put a Z in there. So what do I need to do first? So before we get into creating anything, my advice would be, on your splash screen, you'll see there's a ribbon down the left-hand side. If you go right down to the bottom to Options and open the Options tab up, you will see that you have a Options window that opens up. And by navigating down to Language, we're able then to add an Office display language. And if you simply add a language from here and then scroll down and select English United Kingdom, press install if it's not installed already. This means that the software is recognized that, and then you simply just select that as preferred. So I will select the US just because it's set as a preferred option there, but I'm going to set preferred. You want to set that for United Kingdom. Hit OK, and that will make that document set to the UK language. Now, sometimes this might not work, so an extra step, and it's going to be slightly different depending on the device you use. If you're on Mac, so an Apple product, it will be different. You'll have to go into your search menu. So on Windows, we have the little magnifying glass just down here, and I can type in keyboard preferences. I can also, as a Windows user, in the bottom right next to my date, you see I have an ENG, which is the keyboard type. So I'm able to press that and select the preferred keyboard that I'm using. Because I'm using an English keyboard from the UK, I'm going to select the UK keyboard as a default. So that means whenever I load up into Microsoft now, it should load up with the English UK spelling for all of my words and all of my documents. So that's really important just to set that up. Otherwise, every time you type a word in, it can come up in, well, not every word, but every time there's an instance where a word changes between a language, like apologise, it will flag up as a mistake and it can get quite annoying. While I've skipped ahead, why my Word has skipped ahead and created a document, I'm just going to show you just in the bottom left, you can see what version of the document language it's being used. So as you can see, I am on English United Kingdom here. You can set a language by coming in here, but I have noticed every time I've set it to UK without setting my keyboard preference, it will switch to whatever that preference is. So I used to have it on United States. Even though I would change my language from this section here to the United Kingdom, it would change back. So please make sure that you do have the right keyboard set up as well. Now that I have my language set up, I'm going to take it back a step just so we're back on the splash screen then to create a document. And to simply do this, hit blank document. And as you can see, we have that load up here. So what are we seeing? Well, we have a page here, so this is everything that's going to be put in this document. If you think about a piece of paper in front of you, it's sort of like that. And we can type in anything. So I will type in hello world. And as you can see, that appears on that document there. So before we actually get started, there's a few things that I want to mention, and we'll go through the different ribbons at the top. So you see where it says home and insert. We'll go through those in a minute. However, typically it's always a good idea to think about what you're making just so that you present it in the right format and you're not having to change the format halfway through doing something. Typically, whenever you're writing a report, an essay or a dissertation, generally that's going to be in an A4 size and it will have set dimensions already. Word is great. The default is this, so I don't need to do anything. But let's say I'm going to make a leaflet. I don't want my text, I'm gonna have it landscape, so I'm gonna have it sideways. I don't want my text appearing the wrong way, because if I type in hello world now, and if I printed that out and moved it landscape, my text is going to be sideways, which is no good. So if you are doing something that requires you to change the position of the document, what I would do first is head up to the ribbon at the top here, and you'll see we have layout. So if we select layout, it will allow us to change a number of settings to the document. And while you can change these at any time, I would advise to at least take a look over this first so you understand what's here. First of all, we have margins. As you can see, I'm not typing right at the edge of the page. By default, Microsoft indents this. But if you don't want this indent or you want something different, you can press margins and this will change where that margin sits. I would recommend leaving this to normal unless you're doing something very particular. So we can leave this on normal, but they are there if you do need to change them. Next is orientation. So as I mentioned earlier, maybe I'm making a leaflet and I want to have this landscape. I simply press orientation and change the landscape from there. And the next important one on here then is the size. So if you are doing something where you don't want to use A4 paper, maybe you're going to create a poster, maybe you're going to create some leaflets, you can come in here and change this to the print size that you need. So you have your A4, which is standard paper, A5, which is your smaller size, and then you've also got A3. And there's a number of different settings as well, and you can also load more settings if you press more paper sizes. However, by default, and a lot of the time, you will just leave this on A4, as it's pretty universal, especially for report writing. There are some other options as well. So we do have columns, and what this refers to is how the text is broken up into. Now you can change this later, and it will be affected by a number of different things, like if we've added images in, the text will automatically move. Yet again, by default, you can keep this on one. So if I do have a long line of text, so I'll actually just copy and paste something over now. Here we have one column of text, and I can split that up. So if this will be great for things like news articles. If I pressed on this side, I should be able to write a new box here. I want to keep it on default, so I'm going to go back to 1. That is one way to split it up. Additionally, we can indent our text as well. So if we select this text, we can create an indent here. So that will just move that margin point over for us as well. Yet again, probably just want to leave this to the default, as it's mostly fine as it is, and there are different ways to change this as well. So that's the layout. Generally, I would leave that. You don't really need to come in here all the time, but if you are doing something that does need changing, that is where you will change it. Before we start typing anything, the most important bit of advice I can give you on any online application is understand where the save button is, because there's nothing more heartbreaking than spending a good hour, good 2 hours, good 3 hours working on something for your computer to crash, to experience a power cut, or you drop your laptop and you've lost that project forever, right? So how do I save? Well, there are 2 primary ways I would recommend saving, and there's also some shortcuts as well. If you're saving your document for the first time, and I would recommend starting with the save before you start writing anything down, just in case you do end up writing a lot and you forget to save. First of all, just on the ribbon where we went to File, you'll see a different type of splash screen that opens up. And what you do on here is you would simply navigate to the left and you'll see there is a Save As button. Going on a slight tangent, with documents, I would recommend keeping both a hard copy, which means saving a document to your device, and then keeping a cloud storage copy, which means uploading it to somewhere which has access to the cloud, so you can access that document anywhere. That way, for example, if your laptop gets stolen, you're able to retrieve that document on the cloud, and the same thing happens if the cloud gets hacked or the cloud goes down for server maintenance, you've got a local copy as well. So I'm going to create my hard copy first. So what I'll do here is I'll press Save As, and from here you'll get a file structure. Just on the left, navigate to Browse, and you can choose a folder to drop these into. For me, I'm going to drop these into my Downloads folder just as a temporary place to keep them. However, if you're working on this document for a long period of time, I recommend creating a folder within Documents or on a hard drive, just so you have a nice area to work these in. I'm going to call this How to Word. There we go. And I will save that document. So now I have a local copy and everything's safe. And if I was to close this now and open it back up and I've done loads of work, I'll see that and it won't just be deleted. However, I also need to create a cloud document just in case anything happens to my PC while I'm working on this. So you do the exact same again. We go File, Save As, and then from here you'll be able to see there is a OneDrive link. In here I can create a new folder and I can upload this to my OneDrive. I simply hit Save, and then I've got my cloud storage version as well. I'll know if my cloud storage version is working because in the top left you will see there is an autosave feature. So that will be enabled, and if I was to close that document I won't have to hit save again. For your local copy, however, you will have to come in and just do another save for that as well. Generally, if you've done a cloud save and then a local save or vice versa, I would always do the process we've just done. Save as, overwrite your local copy so you've got that hard copy there as well. When we're actually typing out, my advice would be to save as often as needed. I do a lot of film work. The advice in film is save every 5 seconds. You probably will find that very annoying. There is an autosave that triggers every couple of minutes. However, if you've done a big piece of text, even if it's just a paragraph, hitting Control S will save the document if the autosave's not on already. Just in the top left, you'll see there is a little floppy disk icon, which represents the save. Hit that and that will save your document too. So now that we've saved the document, it's safe, I can write on it. If I save it and then open it up later, it'll be fine. Let's go through some of the different ribbons that we have. Starting with probably the most important ribbon that you'll spend most of your time in, which is the Home ribbon. The Home ribbon is what we're on now. It's designed to showcase everything that you'll need on Microsoft Word regularly. What do I mean by this? Well, we have our font editor, so we can edit fonts. We have the alignment of the paragraph, so when I'm actually typing things in, do I want bullet points? Do I want numbers? Do I want an indent font? So we have all of that information there. We have the styles, and what those refer to are headers and text, which we'll get into later because they are really important when you're writing reports and documents. You'll also see I have some different options just on the right, and you should see most of these as well. However, it could be looking a little bit empty up here, and that's because I've got various applications that automatically integrate with Microsoft Office. So for me, I've got Adobe Acrobat, which allows me to open up documents in a PDF format. So that's just an extension on there. If you don't see this, don't worry about it. You'll be okay. I also have one for Grammarly. So I do use Grammarly to check my spelling. So that's an additional add-on through Grammarly's website, which just pins to my Microsoft Word there. However, most of this, from the clipboard to the editing tab, and you'll probably also see voice, sensitivity, and editor, and add-ons, are all there by default. So you should see all of these already. But what do they actually mean? Well, if we start going left to right, the clipboard is an area where you can copy information and it will sit there temporarily to allow you to place information later on. So if I was to type in hello world again, I can left click and select that text so you can see it's been highlighted by a box. And just on the left, I get two options. I can cut, which if you imagine a pair of scissors, we're going to remove something and take it out, or I can copy, which will retain the text on the screen or the item on the screen, but then I can make a duplicate of it later on. So I'll show you text. So we're going to remove this section out of my Word document, and from here, I can select paste and paste that information back on. And this is a really helpful tool if you need to move. Maybe you wrote a paragraph in the wrong place, but you've got to keep it. You can just copy that and paste that later on. Now, these are very universal tools. They will get used quite a bit. You can copy information from Google, for example, and paste that on. Maybe you're copying something from a different Word document and pasting that on. So you can just select things all the time. The shortcuts for Windows, I think they might change very slightly if you're on a different device, is Control-C to copy. So if I'm just going to copy this and I want to paste this, I'm going to Control-C. Then I can Control-V, and that will paste that on. If I just want to remove this and paste it later, so we're going to cut and paste, you can press Control-X and then Control-V to paste that back on. For Apple users, this is the command icon, and then it's the same keys again. So Command-C to copy, Command-X to cut, and Command-V to paste. Additional tools that might be very important for you to know. Just above the clipboard, you'll see we have these two little arrows. These are your undo and redo buttons. So if you make a mistake or you've undone the mistake and then you realise you want it, these are the buttons you'll press. So if I actually don't want that there and I want the two versions of the hello world, for example, and I didn't want to paste another one, I can just press my undo button, press it again, and as you can see, it undoes all of the things I've done in an order. So if I type in a word and then undo, it will remove that word. If I type in a word, type in another word, it will remove that second word first. And then if I decided, well, actually, I like the first one better, I can redo as well, just by pressing the other arrow. And these are also shortcuts as well, because they're universal. They're used on a lot of applications. So if I hover over it, it does show me the shortcut. It's Control-Z to undo and Control-Y to redo. So those are two important buttons as well. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy and paste a document that I've worked from before. So you'll see we have Rowan's Audible Alchemical Crafting Podcast Guide. There we go. I'm going to quickly skip ahead. So don't pretend you've seen nothing. I've just copied and pasted. This is what it looks like now. We're going to move on to the font section. And this is a very helpful area because it allows you to choose fonts. It allows you to change the colour of the fonts, underline things, bold things, and items like that. So one of the more important ones is choosing a font. Now, it's very cool to have very different fonts. However, it should be recognized while I'm talking about this that it should be recognized that we always design something for accessibility. So different fonts have different levels of accessibility. Cursive, for example, where you have really fancy writing, such as this one, can look very hard to read to certain individuals, like people with dyslexia. So it's always wise to pick a font that is appropriate for the document you're writing. These are things, as you can see, we have one selected. This one works fine, but you've also got, so there's things like Times New Roman or Calibri that are all universally good fonts to use because they're not too hard to see for different people. If you want to know more information, I'd recommend typing in what fonts are accessible because it gives you a massive list of fonts that will really help you understand a little bit more information about why this is important. But generally choose a font that's easy to read and understand. Now obviously there's times where you do need to pick a fancy font for things like if you're making a poster because you want to give it a certain style. Even then, just make sure or learn more about having accessible font just so you've got a better understanding so you can avoid having really poor fonts and colours and things like that. So I will keep it on the font we've got here for the time being. To the right of that, we also have a size increase. So I can use this drop down and select for a bigger size. So we'll go 20. But I can also use the two buttons to the right of that. So we have increase font size and decrease. I can also type in this box as well. So I'm going to type in 200. And as you can see, that has increased that font then to 200. I'm going to change this back to about 22 because I think that's fine. We also have a change case button just to the right of that. So if you want to quickly, if you wrote a sentence and you've done capitals for every word, you can select that sentence and remove all those capitals by selecting sentence case. Maybe you want a sentence all in lowercase, for example. Generally, sentence case is really good. However, there are times where you might use an acronym, for example, which needs to be in all caps, so just make sure you're reading through what you're changing. However, this isn't an option that's selected all the time. It's selected whenever you select something, so you can come in and just change that. So I've done this all in caps, but let's say I wanted it all in lowercase. I can select that, and as you can see, that does change. I actually want this all in uppercase, so it's a very quick way then to have something all in uppercase. The button to the right of it, you might have seen me use it just, is the clear all formats button. So if I come in with some text from a different Word document, for example, where the font is different than what I'm using or different than the style I've selected, I can select that font. I'm just going to quickly change it. So there we go. I've changed the font. If I want that to return to how this font looks, I want to get rid of all the formatting, I simply press the A and that then reduces it down from there to the format I'm using in my styles, which we'll get into in a moment. The buttons I just pressed underneath where you choose the font is, first of all, your bold. So you can make the text bold to make it stand out. So as you can see, that is added a considerable amount of more black lines over all of my words. You'd have to do this by selecting. You can do this when you're typing new text. If I know I'm going to type a big thing that needs to be in bold, I can type in hello world, and you can see as I type it turns everything into bold, and I can just turn that off and then carry on just like that. And the same goes for the next couple. So we have italic, so it's probably better if we keep working on this one here. So we've got italic, so it just slightly indents everything on an angle. We also have underline, so you can see that adds an underlined underneath the words, so great for titles or making users understand something's important. We also have strike through, so this can be used if you want to do you're going to remove a spelling or something, you can just cross something out. So as you can see, Crafting Podcast now has a line through it. And then finally, if you need a subscript, so things like small letters just below or just above, you can add these as well. So if you're doing things to like the power of 2, pout whatever, you can add those on as well. Additionally, in the font then, we have some additional settings. The first one is for highlighters. As you can see, I selected my font and just highlighted this horrible shade of yellow. I can come in and I can change that by using the drop down here, and I can change that to a different color. I'm going to keep it on no color. I also have text effects, so if I wanted to change my text into something, as you can see on my screen now, I can do that, and I've got a number of settings for exactly how I want those to look. I'm going to leave that for now. And the last one is then the font color changer, so I can come in, change the font to a different color that I like. For example, maybe I want the font to be this shade of green. I simply select, and there we go. Yet again, just like the fonts, colour does play into accessibility as well. Certain people can't see different colours, or they can be hard to read against a certain background. Generally, white and black are very good colours because they are complete opposites of each other, and you can read it a lot more easily. However, if you are adding a form of colour, whether that's to signify something, whether that's just to make the title pop, these colours here should, maybe not all of them, but most of them, if you're selecting down here, are all accessible. As you can see, if I use something like that grey, it's not very accessible because I can't see that against the white background. But if I'm choosing something like this dark purple or blue, that's a lot more pops out against the white colours. So a lot of these colours here are accessible. It's just really thinking about, if I was to print that document out, would that blue be visible? Maybe, probably not. You can select if you want more colours as well, so we do have more colours, which brings up this hex editor here, so you can find a colour in a shade that you like. So that's there as well. The next section is paragraphs, so this is really controlling sort of this block here. So when you've done a block of text or maybe a sentence, is there something specialised that you need to do? So before starting at the top, we're actually going to start just below here. So this is the text alignment. In the English language, we read left to right. So that's how the default is for the paragraph. It's aligned to the left, so your eyes start at the left and you read across to the right. However, maybe you're doing something where, especially in the case of a title, you might do this. You actually want it sitting in the middle, just so it stands out. You can center this by selecting the center button or Control E. As you can see, that's just put that in the middle there. And the same goes if you want to center something on the right. So maybe you're writing a letter to someone and you want to have their address appear on the right. You just select the select the right from there. And we can also justify the text as well, which normally just defaults to however the layout is set up, which mine is left to right. Moving up to the start then, we do have a number of options. The first one is for bullet points. So maybe you want to bullet point something. This list will have these amount of items, for example. You can just, let's split this sentence up here. You can simply you can either select this and then write, or write something and then select this. So I'm going to select this button here, and as you can see, paragraphs are added. Bullet points are added, and I can come in and I can change the type of bullet point I want. So I'll change it to these 4 triangles, and as you can see, that adjusts on there for the bullet points. I can do the same for numbers, so maybe I don't want bullet points, but maybe I want to do a number of ordered of things. First do this, second do that. I can do that simply by selecting this, and as you can see, it does 1 and 2. And yet again, we've got different versions of that on here as well. So you have different number libraries that you can come in and select too. And then finally, you've also got a multi-level list. So maybe you've got part 1 is going to be this, but part A of part 1, so you need to do this first in part 1. You can select that and then come in here and change that. Additionally, you can also indent these as well. So maybe you want to indent a paragraph because it stands out separately, or maybe, like I just said, you want a part 1 of part 1, so that would become an A. You can select where it says 2 and just indent that, and it either gives you a bullet point, or you can say, well, actually, I want a letter, or I want something like that. So there you go. I've very quickly done we got part 1, but part A. So you've got that in there. You also have sort, which is used mostly for things like graphs. So I won't cover this just yet. But we also have all different types of tools in here, so you can also change the shading of the colour behind your text, which generally I'd leave to whatever the background of the page is anyway, so mine's white. You can also come in and add borders, so things that just creates a nice line straight across my page, and I can come in and change how I want that displayed. So maybe I want it at the top rather than at the bottom, so think about top and bottom text, that's where that adds. And that's the paragraph section in a nutshell. There might be one more, which is the lines and spaces. Very important, I can't skip over this, is thinking about the distance between this line and this line. Maybe you want this bigger. You can come in and change that from here as well. By default, I think it's set to 1.15, but you can come in and change this if needed as well. Styles is the next section, and this is really important when you come to make a table of content and other things like that. So we'll cover this now, but we'll go more deep diving into this later when we're actually exploring how to do a table of contents. But essentially, think about how you structure your Word document. Typically, when you're writing a document, you're going to have a body of text, but you also might have a title detailing that section. Maybe you'll have a title at the top of the page, then you've got different headings going down, maybe you've got all types of different things going on. So as you can see here, I have my main title, I have a subtitle, and then underneath this, normally what you would do is you'll have a title just saying what this section is, and you might bump it down further. So if we do this, as you can see, by default, it selects normal. So this is just a normal body of text. I can write whatever. But if I'm wanting to start to add headers to make things more categorized, and if I want to do my table of contents, you'll see just all of these different options, which is a very quick way to indicate to Word what a section is. I don't want this, for example, to count as a section. I want it to count as a title. I want this to count as a title too. So I can come in and very quickly just say, hey Word, this is what it is. However, as you can see, it's probably better if I select the one we've changed already. If I change this heading, it changes it to a generic default of what Word has set out for me previously. This is very good, but it doesn't come with a restraint, but it comes with knowing that you can come and change this later. So for now, I want both of these as titles. So I can choose a title, I can choose a heading. I will change this to a title, and I can position that to however. But let's say, for example, well, I want to use a different font, or I want to use a different color, and I want anytime I use a title to be that color. What I'll do is I don't have to select this text, but I can come up to here and then right click this. And from here you get some options, and you'll want to select modify, and from here, as you can see, we have a modify panel that pops up. So this allows me to change the font and everything that was in that font and the paragraphs panel that we've just covered. So maybe I don't want to use what the default is, maybe I want to use a different color or a different font, so I'm going to type Times New Roman, and as you can see, that updates here and it shows me what it will look like before I submit it. I can come in and I can change the color of this as well. I can change the placement just like that too. It's really handy, it's really important that you understand that you can come in and change this, and it will universally change all of the titles based on that as well. I think the title by default looks good. Maybe I would want to change the color, maybe I would want a different style. It really becomes more impactful when you're creating headings for different things. So like I said earlier, I'm just going to first of all clear the format on these and add these back up because I'm going to copy some more text in. But this is my introduction. I don't want to add any fancy text to this just yet. I'm happy with how it looks. But my next sections, I will have headings and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy some content over. And as you can see, it has copied the exact format that I want it to format. Well, the exact format that I've taken this document from. However, I want to change this and make it my own. So I'm going to select all my font and then I'm going to come and clear this. So here we go. We have some ideas from what the document I've pulled across already, or just generally, I've got some ideas of how I want this document to sit. this here is going to be my first section. So this is where I'm going to break this down, and this is going to be in my table of contents. This is in the contents table. So in my styles, I'm going to choose heading 1 because heading 1 is the first divider. So you've got your title, then you've got section 1 that will appear straight away there. And then I will come in and I think, well, my next section, I've got a little bit of an introduction to section 1. Then we're going to go into a subheading from there. So I want everything now onwards in this section to sit in section 1, but I want to break this up into smaller sections. So here I've got important questions. What I'll do is select heading 2. So what this will do is it will log everything underneath this until the next time I press heading 1 or heading 2, for example. Keep everything within this section. So when I create my table of contents, it will say this is where all this information sits. So I'll select heading 2. As you can see, we've got the heading with section 1, and then we've got a breakdown from there. If I want to change these, just like we did with the title, you can come in, right click, modify. I don't like that shade of blue. What I actually want it to be is maybe a lighter shade of blue, or maybe I want it to be orange. I can select that. I can change all of that information, and just like that, it's changed straight away. I'm going to do the same for heading 2. We're going to go modify, and then we can change that to green, for example. I'm not a fan of that green, so I'm going to not make a comment. I'm going to go back into my modify. Let's make that the same shade of orange, or maybe a lighter shade. Maybe a darker shade. There we go, that looks better. Now I've split my sections via the styles, and I can come in here and add as much as I want. Typically, you'll want to keep your bulk of text, so not the titles, in this normal sprocket here, and you can come in, you can also modify this. So this will automatically update this font window here from when you're typing normal text. So come in here and you can change all of that information too. There are different styles. So you can come in and you can see they've got some already, so maybe you want to quote something or items like that. This one here on my original document, it was in a different type of file. It wasn't a heading, so I don't want this to count as a heading. I want this just to count as maybe like a sub-paragraph or a breaker of the paragraph. So I will just type in subtitle. So this shouldn't be picked up when I create my table of contents, but it's different enough of a font to recognize, hey, this is, you know, just a title. It's something to pull my eyes to outside this big body of text. We will get into this a little bit later on, because I've got a full thing that will just show how this works in a moment. And that is mostly what the home ribbon consists of. So that is how you'll come in and change most of your bodies of text very quickly and very simply. Make sure you do use the style panel because it is important later on, and you can come in and change these. You can also make your own style, so maybe you don't like any of these, you can delete these as well. This can be a very powerful tool. As a former film student, I used to make my own templates for this, so I'd clear this out, and what I would do is I would format this in a way that would represent a screenplay. So for example, I can create, for those who are doing film or are interested, I can do the title of the scene followed by the directions, and then have different things for character names and all that type of stuff very quickly, just by editing these and then selecting these every time I want to select and write a certain thing. So it can be a very powerful tool. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the insert ribbon. So just to the right of home, you'll see insert, and we press this and we get a new set of options that appear. Now, insert can be a very powerful thing to do. It allows you to add images, it allows you to create models, it allows you to make shapes, does a number of different things. There's also shortcuts for all these, so we'll get into the shortcuts later on. But for now, we'll just look over what there is here. So, let's say I don't want this to be an open document. I want this to be more like a book cover. We'll have a nice cover sheet. And as you can see, just on the left here, we do have cover pages, and Microsoft has some templates that we can use already. So if I did want to have a nice sheet on this, I think the banded one looks quite good. I just press that, automatically changes for me. We can come in, move my title up here, for example, and we have a nice cover sheet that's already on there. So it's a really good thing to notice. I'm going to Control Z that. I like how this looks because I don't want it to appear like a book. But that's something to be aware of. The next one, for example, is a very powerful thing. Is maybe I want to have a blank page, or maybe I want a page break. So let's say, for example, this page here, I want just to have the title and the welcome information. I don't want section 1 to appear right after. I'll do a page break, so it will shift all of that information down onto a separate page to keep it separate. So we have my introduction is just the introduction. My second page is then getting into section 1, for example. So all I did there was just simply hit page break and it does that. However, maybe I want to add a blank page so I can add images on and I don't want to interfere with the text. I simply add a blank page. And I can add text in here as well, but as you can see, it's just created a blank document for me. I can also backspace and remove that. Maybe I want here where we say we've got to use this as an example. I've got some content that I'm explaining, so I'll press that. It will divide the page into a blank page. So first of all, we've got a blank page here, and then that rest of the content sits on a fourth page. So just imagine you have a book and you've slid a new page inside. So those are two very, very good things to know that sit there. Now the next section is for tables. If we select tables, you'll see we can quickly create a table. So maybe you've got some data that you very quickly want to represent. You can just quickly graph that out. Let's very quickly make a table just so you've got some understanding of how to do that. So I'm going to make let's make a slightly smaller table, 4x4 table. I simply select that on my grid and I can then, as you can see, it appears as a temporary thing on my document. When I press left click, it will load that into my document. I can come in and insert tables. I can also draw tables. And also, if you know how to use Excel and you have your Excel spreadsheet, you can insert one of those as well. You can also create a version of Excel in Word. However, for most of the time, you will come in and just use this grid. So we're going to create a 4x4 table. So let's do that now. I'm going to left click. As you can see, the table launches. The insert ribbon replaces with table design. So I can come in and very quickly change the look of the table. So as you can see, we have some different things here that pop up. I can come in and change all to these. My recommendation is, depending on the information you want, is you'll want to have one that explains the axes of the table. So whether that is like this one where you've got one that goes left to right, maybe you've got one that goes left to right and down, is then you select that just so it moves away from the plain grid. Now, just like everything in Word, these are very customizable. So you've got all the color that changes up here. But if I wanted to do this manually, I can, if we just revert back to this, I can select these boxes by left clicking and dragging, going back to table design. And here you'll see shading. So I can come in and choose my own colors as well, just so that stands out. I personally don't mind having one of these. I think these look fine. When I type in one of these boxes, I can type in the information that I want to display. So as you can see, very quickly done. And I can come in and then type in different things. So I can come in and go, here, this is Bill. And then I can press tab to move left to right in these boxes. Once I've hit the end of my table, I hit tab and it goes down, and I can keep going, filling these information boxes out and going from there. If you need to add a new one, you can either hit tab in the last box, and as you can see, it adds a new box in. However, let's say between Bill I have Andy, and I want to add a box between Bill and Andy. Well, I can do this very easily. If I press tab, it will load into Andy because there's a box available there for it. However, if I right click, we get this menu that pops up. And it has some of the very quick features that you will use all the time. So as we mentioned earlier, we have cut and paste in. We have some additional settings as well, like read aloud. But underneath, we also have insert. So insert in this case is referring to inserting a new cell. So as you can see, I can insert above and below. Wherever my cursor sits is where that action is going to play. So if I come in and I said I wanted to put something underneath Bill but above Andy, I just select Bill, select below, and as you can see, that new row has then opened up from there. You can also see that does appear just at the bottom where my mouse is. I have my fonts that I can add here as well, but I can also insert above and below just to like that as well. So that's a very quick guide to having tables, but make sure that when you have a table, you have the context around that table. As you can read on my document here, I have no context, so make sure you might want to create a new font for this or a new style. You can say this table represents this, and you have that displayed very clearly for people to understand. I'm going to delete this table, so I'm going to left click, select this table, then hit backspace, and that will then be deleted. Navigating back to my insert, you will now see illustrations. And from here you can insert different shapes, different icons, models. You can add charts. So if you've got a bar chart, for example, you can press chart and as you can see it very quickly adds a chart in then to change. The biggest one that I use all the time is adding images. I like making things. I like taking things from Google and putting it onto my document. And you can come into your pictures and you can insert images from this device. You can also do stock images and online images. Stock images is a library that Microsoft has created that you have a license to use. You won't get sued for copyright, so you can come in and use those. Online images is if you need to quickly search for something, maybe you don't have it. So we'll come into online images and we'll look at birds because that's what it's no, cats actually. We look at cats and as you can see we have very quick Bing images of cats that I can insert into a document. So I like this little goofball, we'll add him, we'll press insert, and as you can see that image appears on the screen. However, I save a lot of my images and I keep them pretty well organized. So I'm going to quickly open. So here I've got my file explorer out and I'll just share the contents of this. I'm going to take this donuts PNG, just for some context. I've been learning Blender and one of the big tutorials there is how to create donuts, so don't think I'm weird. All I'll do is simply select my image and then I can drag that on. And as you can see, my mouse cursor is turned to a mouse cursor with a square or a rectangle, and I can just drag my image on there and that displays on there. So it's a very quick way to then add images straight onto a document. When you're adding an image, you do have a number of tools to use. By default, I can press and drag, and as you can see, I can place this image anywhere, and it will split the text up. Sometimes this can be very disruptive for text and not something that you're after. So what you'll want to do is change how this image sits on the document and how the text around it interacts. So to do this, first of all, just to note, we do have picture format, which we'll get into most of this in a second. But the most important thing we're looking at the minute is text wrap, because we want the text to wrap around this image. Now, you can see this if you just select the image. You'll see this little arc here. So if we select that, it gives us some options of how we want the text to interact with the object. And as you can see, there are different things. Generally, I use tight. Because as you can see, as I move this around, and these are anchor points, if I select one of these, it will make my image larger or smaller. If I make this smaller, the text will just wrap around that then, and I can move that and not disrupt the text too massively and keep all of the flow there. And there are different settings with this wrap text, so please come in and experiment. One you can do is you can have the image sitting at the back and text over the top. Just remember to change your font so you can see the font through the image. But generally, I think tight is pretty good, so I'm going to leave that on tight. When you do select an image, there are a number of options. As we mentioned, picture format. They've added a number of new tools in this area. A lot of the areas on Word change constantly. So at the time of this recording, we do have these features. So the first is remove background. So maybe I just want this image just to have the plate of donuts. I can come in and we get this cool AI thing that detects what's on the image, and I can draw areas that I want to keep. So let's very quickly just update this. So we keep the image. It can be a little bit finicky, but I assure you it does work. So we want to remove that object. There we go. Something like that looks fine. I know there's some areas there, but I keep the changes, and you can see that image updates. It's kept just the donut. It very easily removes things that are unwanted from an image. I want the whole image there. I don't want to lose it, so we'll just revert that change by pressing Ctrl Z. We have very quick adjustments to images too, so maybe I want to change the brightness of the image and make it really bright. Maybe I want to make it really dark, for example. Maybe I want it in black and white. I can do that very quickly. Maybe I want it really saturated where the colours are more saturated. Maybe I want to add an artistic effect, which, as I hover over these, I realise some of them don't look very good, but hey, you can do it if you want to. And there's also transparency for an image as well. So maybe you've got two images behind each other and you just want a quick transparency behind. And you've got various different settings as well. So picture styles refers to if you want it framed. You know what, that frame doesn't look half bad. So we've just framed the image very quickly by pressing frame. You can change all of these just like your text by going into here and adding different styles of text. Alt text is really important because even outside of a university context, there might be times where a document is unable to load or a user can't see an image. Adding alternative text means that if that image can't load or the user can't see the image and they're on a thing like Immersive Reader where it reads the document out for them, they're able to understand that there is an image there and details what that image is. I'd recommend for every image, video, whatever you do, is add this alternative text in so there's more context around what people are seeing. And if they're using a screen reader, they're able to understand what is visible on that thing for them. So you simply press Alt Text, and as you can see, it does automatically generate, and it does a pretty good job of understanding what is there. Mine said it's a plate of donuts with sprinkles, which it is, and I'm very happy with that, but I can come in and change this. So there might be I might want to add a bit more detail. This is a plate of donuts that was made in Blender, for example. So I'll come in and I'll add this. That was made in Blender. And as you can see, that just marks that. So when someone who can't access this document, or maybe they've got poor internet, maybe they do use a screen reader, they know there is an image there, and that's what that image is, just so it adds more context. Additionally, there is arrange. So this is sending images back. So maybe you've done a collage on a Word document where you've got multiple images that sit next to each other and you want one sitting forward, you want one sitting back. You can just select these arrange. So if I press back, well, it won't do anything. But if I had another image there, it would then shove my donut or the current selected image to the back. Additionally, we can rotate. So maybe this image was not correctly rotated. I can come in and very quickly rotate that back. And I can also crop images. So maybe I don't want all of that in the background. Maybe I just want that. Maybe I want to cut this down just a little bit. And as you can see, it very quickly cropped that image just to show exactly what I want to see. There is another thing that should be in this panel, but it's not, and that is the captioning of an image, because it's really important to caption what an image is. So when people come down and they're reading something, an image might not be clear what an image is, or it might not clearly represent what you're trying to display. So what you can do is select an image, right click, and if you scroll down you'll see insert caption, and we can come in and type in what we're seeing. So I'm going to type in a plate of donuts made on Blender. As you can see, I'll add that in. I can change if I want these, how I want these displayed. Normally you want to keep it on figured, keep it below, and you can press auto caption as well. Oh, it deleted that, so we'll go back in and add another one. So that's right click, insert caption, a plate of donuts made on Blender. I'll add that caption in to say what it is on the document and press go. And there we go. That caption adds straight underneath from there as well. Let's now add a shape. So we're going to add a shape. You can come in and you'll see there's different shapes we can add. And they work pretty identical to an image. If I wanted to add a square in, I can quickly draw a square. I can change all of the colours. I've also got some predetermined things that I can access to, and I can come in and adjust all of that information from there as well. You might want to add a 3D model or a chart. Charts are probably more important just because they use Excel. So if we wanted to add a very simple bar chart, for example, we can select the type of chart we want to use. I'm going to use a column. I'm going to press OK. You can see there's different styles of bar charts as well. I'm going to press OK, and as you can see, that loads in on here. So we can see the bar charts appeared. You get this Excel that opens up. So essentially, Microsoft has created a formula to create this bar chart to update with the information you put in to very quickly put that on Word without having to do anything too intensive. So it represents what you see on the screen here. So categories are on the left, categories are on the bottom, series are the actual things we're measuring against, and you very quickly just select this and change this to what you want. I'm going to change this to blue, red, yellow, and I'm going to change my series from, let's go 18-year-olds, 19, so I'm just copy and pasting 19 and 20. And now what I can do is come in here and I can add the representation of these numbers from the data I've collected. So I've done a very intensive study, as you can see, of this age demographic and what are their favourite colours. And what I've decided is I'm going to put in some random numbers instead because I have not done that. And as you can see, as I type in numbers from here, that is then very quickly reflected onto my bar chart from here. As you can see, I do have category 4 and I don't want a category 4, so I can select this information, press backspace, and you can see it still appears because essentially it's detecting everything that's sitting in these boxes. And because I've got a box here and I don't need it, I don't need these numbers either, it's still got to represent that in the data because it's saying, hey, there's an empty box here. So I'm going to select just in this bottom corner here. You can see we've got this box and I can drag that up and that removes that data. And that works the same if I want to add data, if I want to come in and say, I can keep filling this out, but it won't represent the data. But if I want it to represent the data, just drag that box as far as I want. And as you can see, it's then very quickly updated that data from there. I'm going to keep that to this. Once I've inputted my information, it automatically saves to Word. So I can just press this cross and as you can see, that updates on there. However, you might have realized, hey, this gives me a nice indication, but it doesn't give me the exact information I need. How do I show numbers? Good question. If you press chart design, you can come in and very quickly add chart elements and also see quick layouts. So quick layouts are things that Microsoft have put together already. So you can quickly come in and go, hey, this is exactly how I want it to display. But you can also add your own as well. So I can come in and add a data label. So I can say, here is exactly how I want it to sit. I want the numbers to appear. There we go. Very quickly changed. Just like everything else, there are predetermined styles that you can choose from as well. And you can always come back and edit this data by either right-clicking and then edit data or selecting the chart and edit data, which opens that Excel to then come in and change that information. Maybe this bar chart is not what you wanted. You can come in and change the type of chart as well to whatever that you need to quickly move that information across to a different place. The only other thing to mention is then you can just come in and change the title of this chart. So fave colors. And as you can see, I've just created a very quick chart just by doing that. So it's very quick. I'm going to delete this because I'm going to move on. But that's how you insert a chart. Outside of this, the other important ones to note is if you want to reference online media, normally my advice would be to then create a link to share this out to the original platform rather than embed in a video, because if you move a document out and you make it into a PDF, or maybe you create it somewhere, or maybe there's not internet access, having an online video isn't going to help. and just having a URL will direct it to somewhere. So if we have it in a directable place, if that URL changes, it won't break the online video, it will just change the link. So what I mean by that is if we're adding something where I'm saying, hey, let's actually direct you to this YouTube video, what we can do is we can select a chunk of text. So where I say why we were making this podcast, maybe I'm talking about a video and I want to share this video. What I'm going to do is first find a YouTube video that I'm going to share. Hopefully you've done your research and you're like, this is exactly the video that I want to use. I'm going to copy a video. I'm going to right click, and I can either do this through insert or right clicking and navigate to link. So you can see we've got link here. I've also got link up here. So I'll use the link up in insert. We'll insert and you get this that pops up from here. So what this has done is it's selected the text. Why am I making this podcast? It lets me download. I can select something from my computer if I've got a document. But I can also copy and paste an address box in. So I've got a YouTube video here. I'm going to paste that into my address, hit OK. That updates as a URL. So when someone comes to read this document, they can press it. As an editor of the document, I can press Control, left click, and then I can press that URL as well. So just a very quick thing of how to embed those documents. There are a number of different options as well. I'd say the most important ones to be aware of is first of all comments. So comments are a very quick way to say if you send this off to review or maybe you're reviewing someone else's work, this section doesn't make sense. Instead of going, this section doesn't make sense, that will be invisible when I come to read it because you haven't identified it to me. Instead, we can create something that's non-destructive as a comment, which will highlight that section. I can come in and go, hey, this is wrong. Maybe explain why it's wrong, but as you can see, I can very quickly add that comment in. People can see that because that will open up. They can comment, they can reply to that comment, but they can also say, yeah, I agree. And then they can press the 3 ellipses and resolve the thread and say, well, I fixed it now, we're all good and sorted, and then delete that further down the line. So very quick and easy to do. Additionally is the header and footer box. So maybe you want to add a header, so that's something that repeats at the top of every page, something that repeats at the bottom of every page. This could be your name, it could be your website. Very quick to add this, you simply press add a header, select the header type or the footer type, and then that adds at the bottom. If you double press in here, you'll see the footer opens up and I can come in and very quickly change the information that's in there. Additionally, in insert, one that I would recommend doing is just adding a page number. So as you can see, every page will have an equivalent number. So as you can see in the bottom left, this is page 1, this is page 2, and as I expand, it will go on to different pages. However, if you print this out, it might just be better just to have the page number on. It's also just an easy quick reference just to look at the bottom of the page here and be like, oh, this is page 2. So if we press on insert page number, we can just very quickly add a page number to either the top or bottom. I will add mine at the bottom right, and you can see that just adds in the footer. Very quick way to then add that number on, just so everyone is aware of what page it is. Additionally, the last 2 items that I would mention as worthwhile in the insert tab is the text box. So we can very quickly add text, which makes it very easy to move text about. I wouldn't use this for main body work, but maybe you want to add a text box under here, but you don't want to format that entire section. You just want to add a very quick text box. We'll go insert text box. As you can see, that makes that there. Automatically comes in as tight, so this font around here is moved and we can update this with the information we want. We have the anchor points. We can also make this as large or as small as we want it. If I select in this box and return back to the home, it will use whatever I've got in my font, and as you can see, it also appears in the shape format as well, so I can come in and add all of that information that I need in there too. Additionally, those who need certain types of letters that don't appear on the keyboard, I know this is things like maybe you need to write an apostrophe on someone's name. So if you're in France or another country which uses different letters, you can access these in the equations and symbols. Additionally, it's worthwhile to note there are universal shortcuts for the different device you're using, which I will leave in the description. So if you head down into the description, you'll see a shortcut. So if you needed to add an O, for example, with the little triangle on top, you can add that through a keyboard shortcut as well. Additionally, just as one additional thing, in case you're doing a document that requires someone's signature further down the line, so it might not relate to your university work, it can be post-university work, you can request someone's signature by first creating a signature line from the inserts panel. So you can see we have a signature line. We'll select that. From here it will give us what we need. So who wants to sign? I'm going to type in John Doe, because that is what is there. And you can fill this out as much as you need and add that, and now John Doe needs to put his signature there. So a very quick way just to add that signature line in. The next ribbon is the draw ribbon, which is a ribbon I never use because I don't find it very useful. However, if you want to quickly draw something just to make it very stylized, maybe in this body of text I'm talking about this donut and how amazing it looks, and I just want to very quickly draw something to highlight which donut I'm talking about, I can come in and change to a pencil or a pen or a highlighter. You've got all these tools here. Simply use a drop down and I can go this one here, woo, and then draw on it with a very bad arrow, because apparently I can't draw arrows. But as you can see, that was very quick to draw. I can also erase this. It's just a very quick way to offhand something. Maybe not too professional, but it can be very good if you're trying to show something very quickly as well. You can do all this with the snipping tool as well. So I'll just quickly launch my snipping tool. So I'm on a Microsoft project, so Microsoft device. So I'm going to type in snipping tool. This is one that comes built into my PC already. It allows me just to quickly copy in areas, so I can copy and paste this as an image. But this also comes with its own range of tools. So as you can see, I do have a pen here, and I can type in, I can add my squiggles, just like that, very quick. So I find the snipping tool more useful, but you might find Word more useful, so you can use that as well. Table of contents is really important for any Word document, as it allows you to quickly access and navigate through the entire Word document, and also gives you a nice place to understand what's in a document as well. It'll also enable users a quick access link to go to a particular section in a Word document as well. So, as you can see on the page, I have an entire podcasting guide that I've created, and I want to add a table of contents too, so users can quickly navigate through this Word doc. So how do I do this? Well, first of all, I'm going to want to work out what sections need broken up to, and as you can see, for me, I do have different sections that I have done. However, I don't have one for this welcome guide, so let's start that now. It's really important to break these down into headings. So here I've navigated to my home ribbon, selected styles, and now I'm going to select a heading. Table of contents works on different levels of heading, so a heading 1 will have a higher priority than a heading 2, and so on. So we can break this down into sort of more generalized categories. Now if I scroll down my page, you can see that I have done these for the different sections. So we've got welcome, section 1, section 2, and section 3. So now that I've actually put sort of my headings together and I know what content's got to sit where, let's actually think about now creating the table of contents. So what I'm going to do is I want this section 1 to be on its own page, so we can move the table of contents into its position now. So what I'm going to do is select Insert, and I can create a blank page which I can just have the table of contents on, but for this particular one I'm going to use Page Break, which just moves that section 1 onto a new page on its own. And then I'm going to scroll up to its previous position. Now I want to place my table of contents in this location, so you can see that I have my blinking cursor just in the section, and I'm going to navigate to References. In the Reference ribbon, I'm going to select Table of Contents, and then I get to choose what table of contents that I want. I would recommend choosing either Automatic Table 1 or 2, but you can create your own. These are very similar, it's just slightly different wording on the table of contents itself. And as you can see, that's placed nicely underneath my welcome section, and I can see the different categories. Now, I do have some different headings set, so you can see that underneath section 2, we do have some different headings that link straight from that table of contents. But if I wanted to create some new titles and some new headings, all I need to do is select a piece of text or type in a new text and then create that as a heading. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are different levels. So if I set some of these to level 2, so I'm going to scroll down and you can see I'm going to select scheduled releases, episodic titles, and podcasting formats. These all belong in section 2, but I want them to have their own little subheadings. So I'm just going to highlight these as headings 2. And I can go on and break things down even more into different headings if I want. But if I just want to quickly update my table of contents, I simply scroll up, select update table when pressing on the table of contents, and update entire table. And as you can see, those headings are now reflected back into my table of contents. And that's how you add a table of contents. Now, for users and yourself, if you want to navigate through your content from your contents table, simply hold the Control key on the keyboard and left click to follow through to that section. The last thing to note then is the review tab. That's of importance. And realistically, this can be a very important tab. However, for me, I've really opted out and used Grammarly instead, as it's slightly better. But this is a very initial, good first check for your document. So as you're writing, you might make a spelling mistake or a grammar mistake, and this will pick it out. So whenever you write something, it will check the database to see if a word's wrote correctly, if it matches up, if there's some form of grammar there. And normally, if a word's incorrect, it will highlight that with a red squiggle underneath. So let me type in, I'm going to type in plant, but I'm going to spell it wrong. So there you go. As you can see, we have a red squiggle that appears underneath that word. We can highlight that, press on it, and it will give us suggested words that it probably thinks we meant. So we can just select on that, and that will update from there. I'm going to remove plant as I don't want that there, but one that you might have seen is I've actually got highlighted its, which is a grammar mistake or a correction. So what I can do here is select its, and it will give me the correct grammar. There we go. And that all comes from, you don't have to be in the review tab, it'll do it automatically, but that comes from the spelling and grammar, which is in the proofing tab. And as you can see, you've got a few options there, like the editor, which checks for spelling and grammar. You've got a thesaurus and word count, which all of this information generally appears on your screen anyway. So in the bottom left, you can see the word count. The editor is you clicking into this and editing anyway. The spelling and grammar is always on. Speech is a tool that will read the document out back to you, which is very helpful. At times, it can be quite overwhelming when you've got big blocks of text. Or, maybe you're commuting and you don't want to look at your phone while you're reading something. You can press read aloud and it will read it back to you, text to speech like a podcast. So that could be a really powerful tool. The accessibility window is, I would always say to check it. It's to make sure that all of your content is accessible on different devices, and anyone who needs an accessibility feature, such as they might be blind, they might be deaf, they might not be able to use a keyboard and mouse or a touch screen, it checks that document to see then, is there anything we can do to improve your document to make it accessible for everyone? So it's really important. The language, I would completely recommend stay away from. In theory, it would act like Google Translate, where you can translate a sentence. However, Google Translate isn't that great. Microsoft Word is probably not going to be great either, so I would stay clear from it. As mentioned previously in this tutorial, we also have the comments. So if you're reviewing someone's work, you can add a comment in a non-destructive way. So you'll be able to see all the comments from here as well and add new comments too. And you'll also be able to track if there's been any changes to your document. So maybe you're collaborating with this with someone else and you can then see what changes have been made. And that pivots really nicely into my next area of talking. You can share a document and you can both work on it live. So the way to do this, and what I'll do is actually pull up the exact one I'm using now, is if we take this Word document and share it onto OneDrive, we can share that URL onto someone. We can send that, whether that's through email, whether that's through Microsoft Teams, and they can then access that link. And what happens is, I'll just bring it across now. You get greeted with this version. It looks slightly different, but this is called Word Online, and it's the exact same as Microsoft Word. You can open it up in Word. However, currently it's in browser. And what you'll see is when someone's working, just to the left of comments, you'll see a little icon with their profile picture that pops up there, and it just enables both of you to work on this document at the same time. So as long as you share, two of you can work on there. You'll see their cursor will be highlighted, so you'll see if they were typing in this welcome area, you'll see where it says welcome. It'll be a colour. Generally it's a random colour, but you'll see exactly where they're typing. You can come in the document, move somewhere else, and type somewhere else too. So it could be a really powerful tool. With it being online, it saves automatically. You'll also see in the top right you have catch up. So every time someone's made an adjustment to your document, you'll see, hi, so-and-so was last here and they did this. So it could be a really powerful tool for you to then use. And then obviously you have your comments box as well. So that's how you would then do that. If you are wanting to open this on Word, it will open up in Word. You simply press editing, open in desktop. That will open Word Online in the app. So it's all of the full features exactly how you would see here. Yet again, the profile picture or username of someone who's editing a document will appear up at the comments. So it works the exact same. And that is a great way to then have that collaboration. But let's say I've finished my big document. I'm ready to submit. What do I do? How do I save? How do I upload? Well, generally, my piece of advice would always to be look at the submission point you're submitting to, because normally they'll be in there exactly how they want you to upload. Normally, if you're doing a report, it will say upload the Word document or upload as a PDF. If it's uploading as a Word document, you simply find where you've saved this icon. You will have to save it locally, so File. So we'll do that together now. It's File, Save As, and then save this to an area that you will use. So we'll use that there. I've already got one saved, so that's fine. And then head to your submission point, and it's a case of dragging and dropping that across. So we'll do that now. So what I've got here is the Blackboard Guidance for Students Blackboard page. And here I'm able to test and practice my submission, make sure it all goes smoothly. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to press into the Blackboard assignments, and then I'll scroll down to submit my assignment. You have this page that pops up here, and it's just a case of dragging that Word document across. So here we have my podcasting guide. I'll drop that in. It will convert. It will ask me if I want to change the file name, make sure it's something appropriate. Give that a second and it will show you how your document looks when you submit it. So this is a prime chance to have a look at your document, make sure it's all formatted correctly, make sure it's all right, and then you can submit that from there. So as you can see, I think my document's mostly fine. I'm happy with that. Let's say I'm happy with that. I just hit press submit and my Word document's gone. Great stuff. Download the receipt. However, in the case that you might need to upload as a PDF, just make sure you check your submission. To do this, it's very easy. Don't worry. If you have Adobe Acrobat, you have one less click, but if you don't, you can do this way. Yes, again, we'll head to File. If you have Adobe Acrobat, you can save as an Adobe PDF. So simply press Save As Adobe PDF, and that will do it automatically. If not, you'll head to Save As. Find a location you want to save this again. Instead, you can change the title here, but if you go down one, it will let you change the file type. Simply select PDF. From here, we can press Save, and then that will save as a PDF. And what we do then is the exact same thing that we did with the Word document to upload. We'll head back to our submission point. We'll just drag and drop that file, so it's saved here as a PDF. You'll see the extension names have changed from docx to PDF. We'll drag and drop that over, let that load in, hit save, and then submit from there.